Hey, Alabama basketball fans. Welcome to the very first episode of the Blue Collar Podcast. I am your host, Michael Southern from Tide Hoops History. And joining us for this season, we are pleased and thrilled to have Emilee Smarr. She is the men's basketball beat writer for the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com. So there's no better authority for us to turn to for inside information, thoughts, and perspective on this year's Alabama Crimson Tide. Emilee, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Love a good little pod.
Yeah, so I know you're in your second season covering the team. So, real quickly, what was your experience like for the very first season covering Alabama basketball last year with the Elite Eight run?
It was very fast. I can say that.
Yeah,
I mean,
understood.
just from physically watching the team, I swear the way that they play, their tempo makes it all go by that much faster. It's like all off season, which I know that I didn't really have an off season by the time I got here because I just hit the ground running. But having experienced it this season, you wait all off season for basketball, and then as soon as it starts, it just flies by. It's here before you know it. So very excited for these next few months. But yeah, my first year was very fun. Couldn't have a more fun coach to cover than Nate Oats.
I, I second that. Now, based on that, we are two exhibition games into this season, which actually tips off this Monday night, 7 o'clock against North Dakota. So, obviously, coaches are going to want to experiment in those two exhibition games. I want to get your opinion on this. Based on what you've seen in the games against Florida State and then the Sunday game against Furman, which I know you were at both of them in person, what did you see that you liked as far as strengths from the team? And what were some of the things that maybe would have Alabama fans concerned from a weakness standpoint after these two exhibition games?
Definitely. I think that these freshmen or this freshman group is a whole strength of its own. To have these guys coming off of the bench, I think is going to be instrumental for Alabama because one, you can tell that they're hungry. They want the minutes, but also they're really, really talented. And you can tell how much work Nate Oats and Preston Murphy have been doing on the recruiting trail to get guys who come in and they're ready to perform. Another strength that I saw, I think that, and I know that this isn't anything in the X's or O's or anything like that, but we saw that this team already has a lot of fight. We've seen them fight with their back up against the wall against Florida State. So I think that it's good to see how well they're actually just kind of already relying on each other. And of course, as their chemistry grows over the next few months, it's only going to get that much better. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. Their other strength is having Latrell Wrightsell Jr. back because the last piece of the Final Four team, and not only that, but just seeing how much of an instant impact he made in his return against Furman, and he looked, I mean, not only did he look like he was back in true form, but the way that he was driving down the court, he looked almost that much better. So if this is him on a load management deal, I cannot wait to see him over the next few months. As far as weaknesses go, defensive rebounding, that's going to be a problem over the next few months, especially during non-conference play and with this early stretch that Alabama has coming up after North Dakota. Turnovers, again, are we surprised? Not really, because this is
Nope, not at all.
this is Nate Oats' system. They know, I mean, so that being said, it's a problem that they're used to, but also LeBaron Philon, as great as he is, as much as his offense has improved, the turnovers are going to have to cut down. I'm pretty sure I calculated it the other day. He had 8 of the 30 turnovers that they had in the first few games. And, we kind of saw that same problem with Mark Sears last year, too. He was turning the ball over a lot, but it's early. The season hasn't even started yet. So there is time for them to clean things up and, really settle into themselves. And also, I think consistency from the 3-point line. They were really going off in the first half against Furman, but they went 1 for 8 from deep in the second half. So I think that having some consistency at 3 is going to be a weakness for this team, but of course it's early. And another thing to think about too with Furman, they weren't really pushing the pace. So if they do have to speed up, are they going to be able to just consistently bank those threes if they couldn't even do it against a team that was a little bit slower?
One thing I wanted to mention, you talked about Latrell Wrightsell. So I know you didn't cover the team when they went on the Final Four run. I'll say one of the greatest strengths what I always saw about Latrell Wright. So during that 2024 season, the thing about what I always loved about Trelly was this. I always called him the human run stopper, or the human run starter. So if Alabama needed to start an offensive run, put Trelly in, he hits a three. If the other team was on a run and you needed to stop it, put Trelly in, he hits a three. He always came through with those clutch shots. And I was surprised how well he looked coming back from the injury in the game against Furman. So he's progressed faster than I thought he was going to based on the severity of that injury. So that's a big plus, especially when you got Jaleel Bethea on the sideline right now. So when we thought we would already have 2 games or exhibition games that we would be able to see his talent, because coach has talked about his ability, and he has a lot of high hopes for him as well. So going to be interesting. I agree. I'm concerned about the rebounding. The thing about turnovers, I always kind of judge Alabama basketball turnovers like this. Give me 15 or less. You start getting 15 or more, then we got a problem. So that first game when they had 12 in the first half, I'm like, oh, it's going to be one of those games. But, yeah, but you've seen it. You've seen Alabama with 20 plus turnovers, but there are games when they can keep it, in the mid-teens, and when they do that, they're usually pretty darn effective from that standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, they hit your 15 sweet spot in both of those games. So
well, that was impressive. They only had 3. Yeah, it was impressive. They only had 3 in the second half against Florida State. So
yeah, and not only that, but just like you're saying here, they're very much so able to adjust. Once they have that halftime conversation, they come out, they don't let the same mistakes that buried them, if you will, in the first half continue through the second half. So I think it's good to already see that this is a team that doesn't just kind of get stuck in its ways.
Well, let me ask your thoughts on this, since we both are concerned about the rebounding, and obviously the rebounding is tied to the bigs. Last year you had an athletic and aggressive front court and pretty good size as far as length is concerned. Maybe not girth, but length with Cliff and Grant, and they would fight. I don't know if I've seen that just yet from the front court. Not that they're not trying, but that's looks like a big work in progress for some of those guys to really get in there and just bang around to try to get rebounds.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, you have to. I mean, Aiden, even though he is huge, he is still very young in theory. And not only that, but last year he didn't really get that much. He got playing time. Don't get me wrong, but not as much as ideally what you would have for a starter returning and taking over the front court in this season. And Noah Williamson, you're coming from the Patriot League, Bucknell Center transfer, not knocking that league at all, but obviously the SEC is a beast of its own. And not only that, but the non-conference schedule that Nate Oats comes up with, you've got to be able to compete in that. And I think that we saw some really good steps for his debut, just given how much we didn't get to really see him in the preseason whenever we got to go to practices or anything like that. I think that he's going to play some really valuable minutes. And obviously Collins Onyeka, he's got to find his footing, because he is as big as he is still technically a high school senior. So this is a very young front court. And even talking about the other bigs, London Jemison, freshman, he has his great moments whenever they're great, but you still have those freshman growing pains. And Taylor Bolbowen coming from FSU, he is lanky, but he could hide behind somebody. So I think that we're going to see them become more and more physical. That would be my hope, but that's going to be essential for them to get through a lot of these large teams that they're going to be facing here in non-conference play.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them coming up. All right, so based on that, first game of the year, official game of the year, coming up Monday night against North Dakota. You nailed the starting lineup for the first game against Florida State. Then they used a little bit of a different lineup against Furman. Obviously, they're going to experiment. What is your best guess for the starting? And again, in the Nate Oats system, starting isn't that big a deal because everybody plays. But what's your prediction for starting lineup for the first official game of the 2025-26 season?
I'm going with LeBaron Philon, Aiden Holloway. I think we're going to see Houston Millette again, because I don't think that Latrell is going to be in a starting position at this point. I'm going to go back with Taylor Bolbowen, just because I feel like Keaton Bristow, he's that motor that Alabama needs off the bench at this point. I think that there's going to be a little bit more time that he would need to settle in as a starter, just based on it was a quiet-ish performance against Furman compared to what we saw against Florida State. So give me Taylor Bowen at the 4. And even though I could say Noah Williamson for the start of the 5, I'm still going to
Really? Okay.
I'm going to go with Aiden Sherrill as the
Okay.
starter at the 5, just because they're back at home. He is the one who is returning this season. And Nate Oats has said during the offseason that Noah isn't the most athletic player. Not that you need the most athletic players against North Dakota. Now, I could completely eat my words because I definitely ate my words after the Trace and Eaglestaff 40-piece last December.
Yeah.
But Trace and Eaglestaff is now at West Virginia, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think he is playing for West Virginia.
Yeah, so that's one thing that Alabama doesn't have to worry about this year. But yeah, give me that starting 5. And
You expect this?
but
You expect a little more reserved rotation pattern in the first game, or at least maybe 70-80% of the free substitutions you saw in the first 2 exhibition games?
I think that it's kind of gonna be the same substitution pattern that we saw. Because I think going off the top of my head, we saw Amari Allen come in a good bit whenever Aiden Holloway would go out, and I think that that's a really good spark plug off the bench. And then we would see London Jemison, Taylor Bowen alternate at the 4. And then I think that we're still going to see a lot of rotation at center. Nate doesn't really like to play his bigs that long.
That's true.
So I think that we're still going to see some rotation there. I don't as much. I mean, I know that you have to have one starter, but I don't think that we can say there's like a clear starter for this group. I think it's going to be very matchup based.
I think you're going to see probably at least 7 to 8 players all have identical minutes when it's all said and done. You'll have 1 or 2, like maybe LeBaron, Aiden, some of those will have more. But then after that, I think your 3 through 8 or 9 are going to have very similar minutes. All right. After North Dakota, there is a gauntlet for a team that's trying to find itself. You have literally St. John's, Purdue, Illinois, and Gonzaga.
Nate Oats, no mercy.
Yeah, I know that is the Nate Oats pattern, but it just seems very difficult given the timing. You've got 3-4 freshmen that you're excited about playing. I mean, I don't know.
You thought you were going to have Jaleel Bethea, and you don't.
You did, and you don't. All right. So how do you feel about these 4 games coming up? Because if you look at it, and I don't want to be a doomsday person here, but this run could either be 1-4, 2-3, 3-2, or 4-1. I could easily see. So I don't even know what to think here based on these 4 teams that are coming up. What are your thoughts?
And we got to be realistic, right? Like, as much as we would like to say that they go and they dominate all these performances, you've also got to think about a fatigue level as well with this stretch, especially with 3 of those matchups being on the road. So St. John's, I really think that one's kind of going to make or break how they do in the rest of that stretch, just because if Alabama can, I mean, not to say that it's not going to be one of the biggest matchups ever, it could be a complete toss-up, but I think that other teams are going to feel a little bit more confident if they see Alabama go and lose its second game of the year on the road. Another thing that I think concerns me the most, honestly, is the fact that it's in Madison Square Garden. I fear that maybe these younger guys might get a little bit starstruck by that environment. I don't know how that's going to hold up, but that is kind of one of my early fears. They're going to have to defend from the tip 110%, especially since this St. John's team can attack inside and get to the rim, and they're going to have to win the offensive glass. So I think that that's my big thing for St. John's up first.
Well, unfortunately, Rick Pitino has a history of inflicting misery on Alabama basketball. And that dates a long way back. So don't ask Coach Sanderson about that when you're on his radio show. He doesn't want to. Yeah, don't talk about Providence. I'm just kidding.
Nope.
When I look at the 4 games on here, the first 3, St. John's, Purdue, Illinois, you get Purdue at home, but I don't like that matchup. Purdue's going to bring in giants because that's the Matt Painter way, and that's Alabama's biggest weakness. I know it's going to be in Coleman, but I have concerns about Purdue. I actually feel pretty good about even this in Chicago. I kind of like Illinois, and I like Gonzaga. So the two that concern me are St. John's and Purdue. I'm not saying Alabama wins easily against Illinois and Gonzaga, but I like the matchups there much more than I like the matchups on the first two.
Yeah, and I think that with Purdue, that's going to be a big game where Alabama's going to have to limit these turnovers, right? Because Purdue is historically so good defensively. They're going to have fewer possessions, so they're going to have to make the most of the ones that they have and not lose them. And that's, if I remember correctly, that's what lost last year's game. And then for Illinois, I think that third game is really where we could potentially see the fatigue hit. They're also going to be on the road, and Illinois got a 7-footer that's hitting threes. So that's going to be a big test for Alabama's. Well, obviously shooting from the perimeter is not really going to be a test for the front court, but I think that it's going to be a test to see whether or not these bigs can hit threes in the way that we saw last year. We know that Aiden Sherrill can hit threes. We've seen Taylor Boboin hit threes, and when he does, it's a sight to behold. But yeah, I'm pretty concerned about those two.
All right, so let me ask this. I know I didn't mention the Arizona, but obviously you still have Arizona in the CM Newton Classic. That's going to be in Birmingham. As Alabama gets deeper into the non-conference, they should play 13 games before they get to the SEC schedule. On the starting lineup that you just gave for North Dakota, who would be one or two of your top candidates that maybe by the time the non-conference ends have worked their way into the starting lineup for the SEC play?
Oh, give me Trelly and Bethea.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, because Bethea, he should be back by injury by then. That's correct. So,
yeah. So hopefully, as far as we know, he should be. But yeah, I think that might be what we see. But I do have a backup starting five if we do not see Bethea come back. Phylon, Holloway, Trelly, and I'm gonna do it again. Boboin and Williamson.
Okay. Oh, okay. You're gonna go with no. Okay. Because by that time he's had
Noah. I'm gonna go with Noah Williamson at that point because I think that he will have learned the speed of Alabama's game a little bit better and how to operate in it. And also, it does seem like Oats has a lot of trust in him to set screens, and spacing the floor is going to be pretty important at that point.
Yeah, I saw some of the tweets coming from some of the beat writers, and I saw a couple of things come out about what Oats was complimenting Noah on the screens, and then I like some of the skill around the rim with some of the passes that he made. So he's got basketball skill and he's got basketball IQ. So
we had a Nate Oats F-bomb like 5 minutes in. It was great during an exhibition.
Oh, okay. Are we going to get a technical foul in the first game of the year?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I hope not. Now against Pitino.
Oh yes, St. John's.
We might have a broken clipboard moment.
Yeah, if you look at that, I definitely could see a possibility of him just going ahead and breaking the glass against St. John's and get the first technical of the year. I'll tell you what we'll do for the technical foul counter. We'll just put tidesports.com across the top. Y'all can be the new sponsor.
That's great.
We'll do it that way. I'll take that. I'll work it up that way. Okay. So another thing I want to talk about, Chris Fleming. So Chris Fleming comes in, does have an NBA background. He takes over for the departed Ryan Pannone, who is now the head coach at Arkansas State. Now, the one thing I want to say about Ryan Pannone, I got a chance to watch a lot of, obviously, what Alabama did the last 2 years. In my opinion, this is a key replacement, and I'm very curious to see how this plays out because under Ryan Pannone, over the last 2 years, it is not an exaggeration to say that Alabama had back-to-back historic offenses, the best offenses in school history. And it's true. I mean, in 2024, they set the school record for points per game at 90.1. That record was stood for I think it was 68 years. It was the Rocket 8 in 56 that had it, and they averaged 88 points a game. And then what does he do? He comes back right back the next year and proves it again. So they set the record again in back-to-back years. You get a Final Four, which you've never done, and you get back-to-back Elite Eights, which you've never done. So I am very curious to see how the offense responds. I know everyone's talking about the defense, but my eyes are on the offense. And we talked about this at the SEC tip-off. For me, I have seen so many great defensive Alabama teams get to the NCAA tournament, and they just hit the wall in the Sweet 16 because they get to that moment where they need 2 to 3 big-time scores just to take over the game, and they didn't have it. and they just ran short. They got cold at the wrong time, and they didn't have enough scorers. And so Alabama has progressed as far as they've ever been with elite offenses, not elite defenses. I'm not saying they don't need a good defense, but I would be concerned if the offense takes a back seat, regardless of how strong the defense comes. Now, that's just me. How do you feel about that?
And I couldn't agree more. I think that the elite offense is absolutely the key. Now, do I agree that defense is what's needed to close the gap? Yes, but
Yes.
I think that Alabama is Alabama if it has that rim and three system. I think that that's 110% what this team needs, just so that way they can get through not only non-conference play, but obviously SEC play. This Alabama offense, it's not just, obviously you can have a team that's physical on defense, but how physical this team has been on offense too, I think is really also what gives other teams a lot of problems. But just as far as what I've seen from Coach Fleming in the few times that I've gotten to see him, whenever media got to do that private practice viewing, it seems like he's really able to break things down, which I know that these guys have been learning an NBA system for the last few years, but you can definitely tell that he's bringing his expertise to Tuscaloosa, and the guys respond really well to him. He has a really good way of simplifying things, especially so that way these freshmen and these younger pieces can understand.
So let me ask you this, and still kind of back on the defense. I've always said that an elite defense will carry you through the regular season. You can have a great record. You can win regular season championships, and you can do great things in the regular season. But if you don't have that go-to scorer, that's where you have the issues in the postseason, because it's a one and done. You don't get a second chance to come back and play him again. So, in 21, when Alabama, first really surged under Nate Oats, they had the number 3 rated defense in KenPom, but they ran out of offensive gas against UCLA. They come back 2 years later, they're better than ever. They set the school record for wins. They're the number 3 defense in KenPom again, and they just have a cold night again. So what do you think? What would be, and again, now we're getting into analytics, but you know KenPom. Everyone studies KenPom. What would be your ideal mix of KenPom offense and defense for Alabama basketball?
You want me to give my ranking?
Yeah, give me your like if Alabama had like a number 7 offense paired with like a 10 defense or something like that. What do you think is the sweet spot that is needed to close the gap?
Honestly, I think that as long as Alabama's offense is a top 5 offense, they can get away with a defense that's in the 15 to 20. That's kind of my estimation of how it can go. Because again, to add another KenPom stat in there, if they stay the number 1 or excuse me, my words just completely malfunctioned. If they continue to maintain the number 1 tempo in the country, I think that that's going to fuel that offensive performance that much more, and it gives you a little bit more, not that you want the leeway, but it does give you a little bit more leeway to have more mid defense, if you will.
well, let's not forget Alabama went to the Final Four with the 111th ranked KenPom defense, so let's not forget that.
Okay, so you know what? Drop my pick down to like 50. That's my I'm kidding.
Well, I'm trying to remember that. I should have remembered this, but there is that magic formula. You have to have, I think it was a top 20 offense, and your defense can't be lower than, was it 20 or 25? There is a combination of all. There's a common denominator for all national champions during the KenPom era.
Okay, good. So my first estimate was all right.
Yeah. All right. So based on that, let's think about the SEC regular season. So the last 2 years, Alabama's gone 13-5 in conference play. What would you say right now, gut shot reaction? Because again, this is just us guessing or trying to put together the best we know based on what we've seen in a limited amount of time. What would you say for an SEC record in 18 games would be the floor for this team, and what would you say would be the ceiling?
I'm going to go with the ceiling.
Okay, we'll go ceiling first. All right, what's the ceiling?
I'm not giving a floor in SEC play.
Oh, you're not going to give? Okay, all right.
My ceiling is 14-4.
Okay.
Losses, I think forgive me if I'm wrong. I think that Tennessee goes 2-0.
Okay, because they play them home and home this year.
They do. but I just based on what, and that's just based on what I saw last year, and it's Nate Oats, right? He's pretty much an all-star for them already, and I think that that's going to continue throughout the season. Not that Alabama is not going to have its fair share of rising stars, and also Alabama has LeVar Ballon, but I don't know why that Tennessee series just kind of gives me a little bit of hesitance. I'm also going to go with a 1-1 because it's a home and home with Mississippi State. I'm going 1-1 on Mississippi State.
Okay, so there's 3.
Yep, there's 3. And then guess my last one.
At Florida, Sunday at noon. Yeah, no.
That
so, yeah, in the last couple of years, the 2 teams that give Alabama matchup nightmares is Florida, because basically what Todd Golden recruits, he always has huge athletic front court that gives Alabama fits. And of course, it was nice to have Walter Clayton Jr. back there.
And Alex Condon is back this year. So
yeah. And then Tennessee, Alabama hasn't beaten Tennessee since 2022. So that's a problem. That is also a matchup issue. I would agree. I would have concerns. I would definitely say Alabama loses at Florida, as much as I hate to say that, but that's a tough one. I'm going to be positive and think that they split with Tennessee. They lose in Knoxville and they win in Coleman. I think they should have won last year. Let's be honest. They should have won last year.
110%.
Yeah, they should have won last year. So, I mean, a different team. I'm gonna do status quo. So for me, my ceiling, I'm still gonna go 13-5. I haven't picked out where all 5 losses are going to be because last year some of the ones they took, I never thought they were going to lose to Ole Miss.
Missouri was the shocker for me. Not that Missouri's team wasn't great compared to what it's been in seasons past, and they were on the road at Missouri. But I think that having Missouri and Coleman, I'm pretty sure that without the zoo in Alabama's ear, they're going to be doing all right.
Well, the one thing I do like, since you've already named your 4 losses, is that means we sweep Auburn and make Stephen Pearl's debut miserable at 0-2.
Exactly. So I was like, all right, look, I thought to myself, I was like, okay, I know that I'm probably going to get heat. I'm going to get clipped somewhere.
Not from the Alabama side, you're not going to get heat.
Yeah, that's the good thing about this fan base is 9 times out of 10, at least the iBob fan base, very realistic. So it's nice. It makes my job a lot easier.
All right. Okay, so that's our ceiling my ceiling is 13-5 for the regular season. Yours is 14-4. What's your ceiling for the SEC tournament? Is it win it, or is it semifinals, quarterfinals?
Semifinals.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you.
I think again that Tennessee and Florida are just I think that they're gonna give a hard time. My floor is first round no bye.
That would be rough.
It would be rough, but depending on how obviously the entirety of the regular season goes, if they don't get a bye, I think that that's just unfamiliar territory for them at this point. You also have a pretty new team all around. So maybe they don't know how to handle that kind of pressure in Bridgestone, because Bridgestone it's an environment of its own. It's pretty intense. And also on top, I just completely lost my train of thought. So excuse me. Just go to the next thing.
Well, the SEC tournament, you're right. They haven't played on a Thursday night since 2022 when they played down in Tampa. So when they had the 1-year outlier where they had the tournament at Emilee Arena down in Tampa, Alabama finished outside the top 4 and they got beat by Vanderbilt on Thursday night. So they were one and done. It was pretty embarrassing. But since then, they play on Friday nights. Now in 24, they went out in the quarters. But last year they got to the semis. I would agree. I would think that the ceiling is going to be the semis. I'm still going to go with the floor is going to be the quarters, because I can't I hope they're not playing on Thursday night, but we will see. There's still a lot of good teams, so it could be interesting when you get that 3 through 6 spot. It could be very interchangeable the way that goes. All right, let's move past the SEC tournament. And when I say ceiling for the NCAA tournament, I'm not saying like win it all. I want to look at it like in stages of weekends, kind of like how far do you think they can get from that standpoint? Because to me, once you get to a certain week, like once you get to the second weekend, anything goes. I think at that point, you're a top 16 team. anything can happen. So how far do you think the ceiling would be for the NCAA tournament?
This is unfortunate because I said that my ceiling was the national championship.
Oh, well, then that's fine. That's the Final Four weekend.
Yes, I do. I think that they make Final Four weekend. Because again, I think that I do remember what I was going to say earlier. Now that I say this, if the injury bug hasn't bitten
Right.
Alabama, that's going to impact.
Well,
where they
now
go
you're
for
asking a
SEC.
lot there because the injury bug bites Alabama every year.
Exactly. So that's what I was getting at earlier when I was talking about the SEC tournament, but also I think in this case as well, depending on how well this team navigates injury, because if we're being completely real, if Grant Nelson didn't push through March, I don't know that Alabama would have gotten to face Duke. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, that's my ceiling is Final Four weekend. My floor is Sweet 16 weekend.
Okay, your floor Sweet 16. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of wiggle room. I'm also trying to speak that into existence just for my travel schedule.
Yeah. Hey, I would love to be in Indianapolis. I have no problem with that. I used to travel in Indianapolis all the time. It's a great city. So it's a fun city. I wanted to be in San Antonio, but it didn't happen.
Same. I even had the Charles Barkley meme like prepared. I was ready to go. This big old down in San Antonio.
I don't know if I'm willing to say that the ceiling is Final Four. Now, that may change as we see how the team plays in the first 13 games. For me right now, ceiling is definitely second weekend of the tournament, which is Sweet 16, Elite Eight. And the way I always view it is you get to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, everything's up for grabs. Anything can happen at that point. Obviously, the floor is first or second round loss. Obviously, you don't want that to happen. But I will go Elite Eight right now as far as ceiling. Hopefully they will prove me wrong. And in another podcast later this year, I will change that and go, they look really good. I'm going to go Final Four. That's the ceiling.
Hey, one of us has to be the jinx on one of these topics, right? So this is good.
Well, I'll volunteer to be the jinx because I got many years watching the team. So I'll go ahead and take the bullet for that one. Okay. Last couple of questions for you. So last year, Mo D was without hands down the blue collar player of the year, and we're going to miss Mo D. Hate that he's at Kentucky. Yeah, it is what it is. Who do you think is going to be not necessarily win as many hard hats as Mo D, but who is going to be Mr. Get Your Hands Dirty, do everything, do all the dirty work, be the one you can depend on when you need something tough to be done? Who's going to be Alabama's blue collar player this year?
Give me Keaton Bristow.
Okay. You like what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, obviously, they're very brief spurts that I have seen him. But I do think that if this continues, that we're going to see some more hard hat action out of him. And I think that the biggest thing with him isn't even what he necessarily, is able to do on the floor just from watching film or anything like that. I think that it's just how much flack he got whenever he came in. He comes out on the floor like he has something to prove. And I think that he really goes out of his way to earn the respect of the fans and all the people that are watching him, because that kid, bless him, it was not a good look whenever Oats pulled him out of the transfer portal. But I think in the first two exhibitions, not a good look, excuse me, but not a good look from fans whenever they pulled him out of the portal.
Oh, okay. Huh. Okay. Just because he was coming from Tarleton State.
Yeah, because he was coming from Tarleton State. That was the big thing. Like I think that it was just because he wasn't this big name transfer. He wasn't Boogie Fland. Everybody wanted Boogie Fland. Keaton, he just came in with so many people being naysayers, if you will, because he didn't have all of these stars. He didn't have all of this hype coming in. And I think that he's trying to prove that, you don't have to be from some high major so that way you can be competitive. So I think that we're going to see some hard hat action from there just because he's trying to grind out his reputation.
I've liked what I've seen so far from two players, Davion Hannah and the hustle of Lyndon Jemison. So I think one of those two could challenge to be maybe the second most hard hat player on the team. So I'm very eager to see what those two contribute later this year and the consistency they have from the effort standpoint. But I've liked what I've saw from both those guys. I've been very impressed with that.
Yeah, I
Yes.
completely agree. I didn't want to give Davion a 2-for-1. He
Oh,
was second up for me.
okay. All right. So now, who's your underrated player? Who is going to surprise people?
My underrated player is Davion. Now, I
Oh,
know
okay.
that is harder. I know that's
Yeah.
harder to say now because Nate Oats has hyped him up with the comparison of being the best perimeter defender that Alabama's had since Sir Jones.
Which is
But
that's a tall thing to live up to.
it's a tall thing to live up to. But
Yep.
that being said, with what I've seen so far, I'm not unimpressed, and I am not unbelieving that he could be a surprise one and done for Alabama. I think that he's going to surprise a lot. Obviously, I hope that Alabama has him for longer than that, but I think that if he keeps on the trajectory that he's going on, that it might be a short stay in T-Town.
I've liked the hustle. I've liked the defense. I've liked the athleticism. So the tools are there. So all he needs is game time. He just needs experience. So I like the foundation is there. I think for Davion to do a lot of great things this season. So that's going to be very interesting.
First dunk of the year.
Yeah. All right. Is the last question I have too obvious when I say who do you think is going to be the best player on this team?
Bylon.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say that was, or as they were calling him on the Furman broadcast, Philion. So they kept calling.
No way. I did not hear that.
I know because you were covering the game, but for those that were streaming the game on ESPN Plus, we kept going like, "Will you stop calling him Philion?" So he did they did that the whole first half.
You would think that at this point in his very young career, but after last year, you would think at this point that people would know how to say the kid's name. It's really not that hard.
Well, again, even though I know it was ESPN Plus, but I always thought if you were doing any radio broadcast or television broadcast, part of your homework or pregame prep is you get the phonetic spellings of the opponents, so you say their
They
name.
print them out for you.
Yeah, I know. So I was surprised, but now they corrected it. I think someone must have told him at halftime, so I think he got it corrected. But for most of the first half, he kept calling him Philion, and I was sitting there going, "Oh man, please don't butcher his name like that. Please don't."
I can't lie. It was one of my favorite running bits of last season, just to see how other announcers tried to say his name.
Yeah.
But you would think that with him being a Bob Cousy Award finalist, that
you would think. All right.
Yeah, LeBaron Fallon, especially with his offensive game, finally. Well, not offensive game. He's always had great offensive game, but with his shooting, completing his offensive game, I think that we're going to see some good stuff from him. Limit those turnovers, but other than that, I think that
he's got to get used to being the primary ball handler, which he wasn't last year.
Yeah, exactly. So and again, like I said, it's very early. There are things that this team is just isn't so often in the 2 games that they played. But they're a little bit too fast for their own good, which is good to an extent. Because we're seeing just how fast they can get, but it can get a little bit erratic sometimes. So
I am confident that will smooth out the more games they play. So Alabama fans, be patient. The schedule is a killer. This is not football. There will be multiple losses. So everyone just mentally prepare yourself for that, and do not try to put the template of how you judge football performance to basketball performance. Totally night and day as far as how the sports are played and the outcomes, how they range from game to game. That's all I can say. I will say that to the Fogs. So for your football-only Gumps who come over and just kind of parachute in and then talk about how terrible the team is after a loss, you need to understand basketball. So
also remember that a lot of these opponents are quad 1 teams.
Alabama's going to have a ton of quad 1 games just like last year. They had a slew of them. So,
and if you weren't happy with the rankings, again, just remember all of these quad 1 teams, they got all the opportunity in the world to go up, but if they go down, it's not the end of the world.
No, having a quad 1 loss in the non-conference and even in the conference play is not a bad thing, especially still when you get ready for the NCAA tournament seeding.
Battle-tested.
Yep. All right, Emilee, I think we touched on a lot of good topics for our first podcast of the season for our preseason preview of Alabama. As we mentioned, I think we will try to maybe at least one more sometime in the middle of the non-conference. And then if your schedule allows, we will try to make it a weekly thing when the SEC starts. I joke with you all the time. You see, I've got the banner behind me. I'm wearing the Final Four shirt. You are not allowed to do that, so that's perfectly fine. You are a impartial, non-biased media member, which you should be. So you can't say Roll Tide, but I can. So I will say this as we sign off, Roll Tide. But what I would like you to do.
Just to clarify, that was a fist pump for being a non-biased media member.
Absolutely.
The 2 words I can't say.
You are a consummate professional, so I respect that. However, that being said, please tell everyone how they can keep up with all your good work so they can stay on top of all the breaking news for Alabama basketball this season.
Yeah, so you guys can always find me at Tuscaloosa News. That is where I be all the time. If you ever want to go to my profile, you can find all of the work that I've done there. If you ever want to say hi, comment, preferably leave nicer ones, but also I take criticism. It's fine. You can find me on X, formerly Twitter, at Emilee_Smarr. Check the spelling right there. Emilee. Thank you, Mom. And also I'm on Instagram at Emilee_Smarr Reporter. And there you can find me doing some video recaps after games where I'm talking Tide. So yeah, trying to expand the presence a little bit this year. And also I will be on Reddit soon.
Oh, okay. All right. So, all right, Alabama basketball fans, you now know where to follow to get your information for the season. I encourage all of you to go follow on all the different platforms, and please come back and join us for future podcasts. This has been so much fun, and I'm looking forward to having more discussions with you this season. So, Emilee, I can't thank you enough, and thank you for joining us.
Me too. Thank you, Michael.